You know, there's this question that just seems to echo through history, popping up in all these different cultures and centuries. Is there anyone good left? Today, we're going to follow that exact question through three incredible and incredibly different stories. We've got a philosopher, a prophet, and a patriarch, all tied together by one really haunting idea.
I mean, think about that. Can one person save a whole society? It's a pretty powerful thought, isn't it? The idea that the fate of an entire city, maybe even a whole civilization, could really just hang on the integrity of a few good people. Or maybe just one. This is the question that links three completely separate moments in time.
And our whole journey kicks off with probably the strangest search you've ever heard of. Picture this, a bustling, sun-drenched city. And right in the middle of it all, a famous thinker does something so weird, people will be talking about it for thousands of years. He lights a lamp in the middle of the day.
So, we're in Athens around the 4th century BC. And the man with the lamp? That's Diogenes of Sinope, a philosopher from a school of thought called the Cynics. Now, the Cynics, they were something else. They were all about radical honesty, and they just hated social pretense. You could almost call them professional troublemakers. So when people would stop him and ask, "Hey, Diogenes, what are you doing with a lit lamp in broad daylight?" his answer was simple: "I'm looking for an honest man." But of course, the symbolism here was huge. The lamp wasn't to help him see better. This was basically performance art. Diogenes wasn't looking for light. He was accusing his entire society of being lost in a moral darkness.
Yeah, to really get Diogenes, you first have to understand cynicism. These guys believed that virtue wasn't something you just talked about in some quiet classroom. Nope, it had to be lived out loud in public. They saw society as fundamentally corrupt, and so they used these public stunts to try and wake everybody up to the hypocrisy.
So this search, it wasn't literal. It was a searing critique of his world. Diogenes basically thought that Athens, for all its amazing art and philosophy, was morally bankrupt. So by shining his little lamp in the faces of his fellow citizens, he was saying, hey, honesty has become so rare around here it's basically invisible, even in the brightest city in the world.
Okay, now, let's jump back in time a couple of centuries. We're leaving Athens and heading to Jerusalem, around the year 600 BC. And here, the search is no joke. It's not satire anymore. This is a divine command given to the prophet Jeremiah in the final, desperate years of the kingdom of Judah.
It's an incredible parallel to what Diogenes did, right? But this time, the stakes are so much higher. This isn't a philosopher making a point. This is God, laying down a final test for a city that's right on the edge of total destruction. But the command is the same: go out into the public square and search.
And the criteria were really specific. God wasn't looking for someone who was just quietly pious or had perfect beliefs. No, he was looking for someone who acted with public justice and who lived with public integrity. In other words, righteousness had to be something you could see, something active in the city's daily life.
And here's the absolutely staggering result. Jeremiah finds no one. Not one single person meets the criteria. And the consequences? They were swift and they were devastating. Within just 40 years, in 586 BC, Jerusalem is conquered and completely destroyed by the Babylonian Empire.
All right, for our last story, we have to go even further back in time, way back, to around 1900 BC. Here we find the patriarch Abraham, and he's not searching, he's actually bargaining. He's standing before God trying to negotiate for the very life of Sodom, a city that was famous for its corruption.
Abraham kicks things off with a pretty bold question. He asks God, will you really destroy the good people along with the wicked? And then he starts bargaining, basically testing the absolute minimum moral requirement for a society to even exist. He starts high. What if there are 50 righteous people? God agrees. For 50, the city will be saved.
But Abraham doesn't stop. He pushes his luck.
Okay, but what if there are only 40? And he keeps going, lowering the number again. How about 30?
The negotiation is getting intense now, down to just 20.
Finally, he gets to his last, most desperate number, 10. This is it, the absolute bottom. If just 10 good people can be found, the whole city will be spared. And God agrees, one final time.
And that's it, the chilling conclusion to the whole bargain. They couldn't even find 10. The city had suffered a complete and total moral collapse. There was just no coming back from that.
So you have a Greek philosopher, a Hebrew prophet, and a Mesopotamian patriarch. We're talking three completely different worlds, separated by more than 1,000 years, and yet
They were all obsessed with the exact same search.
I mean, when you see the timeline laid out like this, it's pretty striking, isn't it? This wasn't just one culture-specific anxiety. This is a timeless human question. From the early Bronze Age all the way to the peak of classical Greece, this fear of moral collapse was very, very real. The pattern here is, well, it's pretty sobering. It didn't matter if the search was for 10 righteous people, 1 just man, or 1 honest man. And it didn't matter where it happened. The result was always the same: failure.
And look, these weren't just philosophical thought experiments. Every single one of these failures was followed by a real-world, historical disaster. Sodom became a cautionary tale for judgment. Jerusalem was sacked, its people exiled. And the golden age of Athens came to an end when it fell to Macedonian power.
The thread that connects all 3 of these stories is crystal clear. When things like public justice, integrity, and honesty vanish from civic life, the very foundation of a society begins to crumble. This isn't about what people believe in private. It's about visible public virtue.
And that, of course, leaves us with a pretty provocative final thought. If Diogenes were to walk down our streets today, holding that same lamp, what kind of person would he be looking for? What's the virtue that's so rare in our own time, yet so essential that our survival might actually depend on it? It's a question worth thinking about.